Hey guys. Back at ya. Ready? All right. Hello, Freedom Talks. Glad you could join us. And now I'm going to try to forget that you're out there because that makes me nervous. I'd rather just talk to the people, but I'm glad for you to listen in. All right. So, I don't know where to start. So, I have this lesson, and I thought, well, I'm just going to read that. I'm just going to read that straight through out of the Bible, because who am I to think I can tell the story better than the written word of God can tell the story? And then I realized it was the book of Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, so I decided I would paraphrase. Who has anybody in here read the Old Testament, or at least the first 5 books? Okay, excellent. Lots of people. Good for you. Okay, sometimes I feel like I grew up in an era where at least in my running circles, the Old Testament was very underrated. If you haven't read it, it doesn't really matter what. Even if you like trashy romance novels, you'd probably enjoy reading the book of Genesis. I'm just going to say, okay. All right, so I want to tell you a story from the Bible, and just see if you can find yourself in this story. So it may be obvious to some, it may be like completely disconnected for some, but I'm going to tell you this story, and then I'm going to ask you, anybody who feels comfortable doing so, to tell me if you see any kind of analogous situation with where you are, or how you feel like you might fit into this story. So God has a chosen people, the Israelites. The people of Israel were his people. You are my people, and I'm your God. They had this relationship that was special, that no one else had. And God's people went to Egypt for food. Now there's a backstory to that I won't tell, but it's a very interesting story if you want to go back and read that. But God's people ended up in Egypt because there was a famine in the land, and Egypt had plenty of food because God had orchestrated that. And so all the Israelites were in Egypt, and while they were there, they flourished, they farmed, they had cattle, they grew, food, and they just flourished as a people. But then their situation changed. They got new leadership, and the new leadership felt threatened by God's chosen people. It's like, they're getting out of hand. There's too many of them, and like they could take us over if they want to. We're going to have to get them in check. So they made them slaves, and they were very harshly treated, and they had to just do menial labor, and it was just horrible. They were beaten, they were killed, they were, not given the supplies they needed to do the work. But then they cried out to God, and He answered. Now, they were slaves for hundreds of years, okay? Not for a few minutes till they learned their lesson. They were slaves for generation after generation after generation. And then they cried out to God, and guess what? God had someone in place. He heard their cry, and He already had it worked out in advance of when they cried out. He had it worked out how He was going to deliver them. So then God, through Moses, delivers them from slavery. Their deliverance is known as the Passover. So it happened, that was the institution of the Passover, where you remember probably about the 10 plagues, and God really showed out for Pharaoh and wanted Pharaoh to see just how powerful he is, wanted all the Israelites and the Egyptians to see how powerful God is. And so he just did one thing after another, just unrelenting, let them go, let them go, let them go. And he would say, yeah, okay, I will. And no, I'm not going to. Yeah, I will. No, I'm not going to. And then finally, it got bad enough that not only did he let the people go, he said, get them out of here. And the Egyptians even gave them gold. They gave them gold and silver jewelry. They gave them the Egyptians gave the Israelites, the Hebrews at that time, their personal belongings to take with them on their journey. I'm going to come back to that. So they made a getaway, and God gave them guidance during their getaway. So he delivered them, he provided a leader for their deliverance, and he gave them a cloud by day and fire by night. And he went before them, was always with them, and they always knew. They could just look up and see God's with us, and he's taking us where we need to go. Then they came upon the Red Sea, and that seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, but not for God. He blew it dry, and they walked across on dry land. And then when the Egyptians, who changed their mind, came after them, the Egyptians got swallowed up with the sea and died. And so the Israelites were so grateful about that. They were just joyful. They made up songs. They were playing the tambourines. They were singing. They were dancing. God has delivered it like nanny nanny boo boo to the Egyptians. God has delivered us from you, and you aren't even here to see us running off with all your stuff to our own place. So they were very happy about that. But then they got thirsty, and they started grumbling and complaining. Their praise turned into whining. And so God heard their complaining, and he gave them fresh spring water and palm trees, and they could camp out by the springs and the palm trees. And then they got hungry. And when they got thirsty, they started saying, God's brought us out of slavery just to leave us here to die. We're so thirsty, we're going to die. God just brought us here, and we're not going to be able to stand it. We had it better off in Egypt. We were better off as slaves. He's going to let us die here. But then he gave them the springs, and they're like, okay. So that held them over for a minute. And then they got hungry, and guess what they did? Did they cry out to God and say, God, please give us something to eat, we're hungry? No, they whined and complained and did some more things that I won't say those words, but they were griping at God because they wanted food. So God provided food, but he had some instructions along with the food. So he provided manna for them, but he told them just collect an omer, which is a one-person serving or for the day. Just collect that in the morning and don't get any extra. And what do you think some of them did? Got extra. And guess what happened to the extra? What happened? Yeah, what specifically got in it? That's the maggots, correct. Yes, the maggots ate it. So, but on the Sabbath day, because God had given them instructions about the Sabbath day, they were not supposed to do anything except prepare their food. But he gave them food. He didn't want them to gather their food on the Sabbath day. He said, you get enough on Friday, or the day before the Sabbath, get enough the day before the Sabbath to carry you through the Sabbath. And guess what happened to that food that they got extra for the next day? No, it was fine. It only spoiled when they didn't do what God said. So when they did it according to what God said, it was still fresh. So to me, the Omer is about self-control and trusting God to provide. He says, just get this much. Don't worry about tomorrow. Anybody ever guilty of worrying about tomorrow? Yeah. Don't worry about tomorrow, what you're going to eat tomorrow. I'm going to provide for you today. I'm meeting you in the present. I'm providing what you need today. God's blessings are not tomorrow. God's blessings are not yesterday. God's blessings are today. So when we live in the moment, that's when we get to feel and experience the blessings of God. So guess what happened? And if you wonder why I'm looking at two things, so I wrote one when I was at home, and then I got a break at work, and I'm like, I'm going to go over that again. And so I wrote it down again, and they're not exactly the same, so I kind of like things out of both of them, so I'm like back and forth. Okay. So guess what they did? Got tired of the food. Guess what they did when they got tired of the food? Started griping and complaining. Moaning, whining, griping, complaining. So God gave them quail to eat. While they were there, so they were having to wander through the wilderness to get to, do you know where they were going? Canaan, which is also called the Promised Land. Yes. And what was the Promised Land flowing with? Milk and honey. So that's just a dreamland, just like the ultimate in where you could think of to go. This is like the ultimate. This would be like heaven-ish, okay? So they were going through the wilderness to get to the Promised Land. They weren't going through the wilderness to stay in the wilderness. They were on a journey to the Promised Land. The wilderness was not the Promised Land. It was just the pathway to the Promised Land. And while they were there, God was giving them instructions. He was teaching them how to live. He was giving them rules. He taught them about cleanliness. He taught them about sacrifices. He taught them about the different festivals. He taught them how to treat each other. He taught them how to respond to Him. He taught them all the things. He gave them all the instructions and was teaching them so they could learn while they were in the wilderness. So, while they were in the wilderness, that's where they were to learn how to obey God and how to trust God. So during that, Moses got the 10 Commandments, and that's when all that happened, is when the people were in the wilderness, okay? So then God wanted to have a conversation with Moses. So he called Moses up on the mountain, and he said, I want you to be up here. I'm going to call you up here. And after 40 days of being there and just a connection. So their spiritual leader needed a deep connection, a very personal connection with God. He had to be built up because the Bible says that Moses was an humble man, and that he was the judge. He had to settle disputes between all the hundreds of thousands of people. That would be a big job. What if your job was just to settle the disputes here? If you were just had one person, every dispute, large or small, it was your job to solve it, okay? So that's Moses, only it's not 50, it's, okay, a lot times that. So he needed to be refreshed. You cannot give more than you have. And so Moses needed refreshing. So God was calling Moses up on the mountain to have time alone with God. And guess what happened while he was gone, while Moses was gone? The people he's never coming back. Our leader has left us and he's never coming back. So we need a God that we can see. So guess what they did? They got the next in command, must have had stupid stamped on his forehead. He agreed to it. He got them to bring all their gold to put in the fire, and he was going to make them something to worship. Where'd they get that gold? Yeah, God gave it to them through the Egyptians. So they took the gift that God had blessed them with, and they wanted to make something to worship instead of God. They wanted to make a different God to at least share with. They weren't saying we're not going to worship Jehovah God. They're just like, we just need a God that we can see, like something right here that we can touch and see. So Aaron made a golden calf out of the gold that God had provided as a blessing to the people. And so then they sang and danced and bowed down and worshiped. They had a festival to worship both gods. And Aaron said, these, Jehovah and this piece of metal, are the ones who delivered you from Egypt. So let's celebrate and worship and honor our gods. So making the golden calf equal with Jehovah God, who had really done all the work, who had led, who raised up Moses, who saved Moses as a baby, who called the Hebrews to Egypt to start with. He had done so much background work, and then here they come like, okay, well, we're not going to forget about you, God, but we're just going to have this, we're going to have this piece of metal also that we're going to say is equal to you, and we're going to bow down to it. Okay. And Aaron went along with that. So God saw what they were doing. Guess if he liked it or not? He did not like it. And there's multiple times that God's like, I am done with you ingrates. I am done delivering you from your rebellious ways. You won't do what I say. You're not grateful for anything I give you. You You worship the gift. You do not worship the giver. I am done with y'all. And Moses, on their behalf, would say, look, if you destroy all the people, then the Egyptians are going to hear about that, and they knew you were leading them to the promised land, and they're going to say you couldn't do it because, you had to kill them all because you weren't going to be able to get them to the promised land. So God's like, okay, Moses, I won't kill them all. But he didn't like it. They got consequences. Does anybody know what one of the consequences of the golden calf was? What did Moses do when he got back down there and saw that? He ground it down to powder and put it in water, and they drank it. It's like, you want a god of gold? Here, drink it. And then it literally turns into poop. Okay. So, God left the people in the wilderness, so they were so disobedient, so rebellious, so ungrateful, that he left them in the wilderness for 40 years. 40 years. Raise your hand if you're not 40 years old yet. Okay, so all your life and then some, okay? He left them there because they needed to learn. They hadn't learned yet. He had more things to teach them. And it's a consequence. You gripe and complain when you get blessed, guess what? You get consequences for that. We won't do it anymore. He still left them to wander in the wilderness. Moses' siblings got jealous of him, his sister and his brother. His sister, who's the one who took him as a baby and put him in the river and watched him, Miriam. And then she got, well, you think you're better than us. You think you're better than everybody. Aaron, who was the high priest, he was in on it with her. You think you're better than us. You think you're all that. And Moses, that was before God, and God punished them. He gave Miriam leprosy. And then Moses said, come on, God, have mercy on them. They're not that bad, and heal her leprosy. And he said, I will heal it, but she's going to have it for 7 days. She's going to have time to think about what she's done. Okay. Then forward a little bit, it came time where they were approaching the land of Canaan. They were approaching the promised land. And so it wasn't like it was empty and they were just going to move in and there were already houses set up. They were going to have to take over the land. So there were people living there. So they chose 12 spies to go in and scope out the scene and see what does it look like in there. So they could have been excited and said, tell us, this is our new land. Tell us what our new home's going to look like. Or they could have been scared, like, are we going to be able to do this? Or tell us what it looks like in there. So they went. 10 of them had such a negative attitude, such a lack of trust for God and what he could do for them, that they were struck with a plague and died. The two, Joshua and Caleb, who said, yeah, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. The grapes are huge. The people are huge. It has everything you can possibly imagine. And with God on our side, we will take that land. That will be our home. That will be our promised land. We will be a nation, and that will be our land because God is on our side, and he will take that for us. So they were to go into the promised land. So Joshua and Caleb got to be the leaders. They lived, and they were going to be the leaders. Moses didn't get to go into the promised land because he was disobedient. Now, he wasn't completely disobedient, but he had disobeyed God. He had been in direct defiance to what God told him to do enough that God said, you're not going. And all those gripers and complainers, all those people that were dissatisfied with all the blessings that God had provided for them for nothing, they didn't work for it. He just gave it to them, and they were ungrateful and griped and complained. He said anyone who was 20 years old or older at the time of the Exodus from Israel is not entering the promised land. So he waited until all that generation of people had died, and then their kids grew up and got to go into the promised land. They were told to wait for God to defeat the enemy, but guess what? Have I ever been told, wait for God, be still, be patient, God will fight for you. You just need to be still, wait for the Lord. And have I ever jumped the gun on that, try to help him out? Yeah, I know I'm supposed to wait, but I really think he wants me to have this, so I'm just going to go ahead. Or don't even think about it. Just go ahead. Not thinking about it being in defiance of God. Just he says wait, and I'm just like, and go straight ahead. Anybody else with me on that? Anybody ever tried to help God out? Okay, so God didn't take kindly to that. Guess what happened when they went in to take him over when God didn't say it was time yet? It didn't work out. They got killed. So then they decided they would wait and do it God's way, and they went in and took over the land. But Moses didn't get to go. Aaron didn't get to go. He died. All the adults who grumbled and complained didn't get to go. They were ungrateful. Other words I was thinking about for being ungrateful: disrespectful, arrogant, saying that God is not good enough, being mad at God. God does not owe us. We owe him. We want his blessings and his favor, and he wants our obedience and a heart of trusting surrender, not just beat down surrender. He wants to give us the good life, the abundant life, the full life, the land of milk and honey, beyond anything that we could ask or imagine, like the verse on the wall says. So it's not surrender ourselves to nothingness, it's surrender ourselves to greatness. But we get that mixed up, and it seems like something distasteful when really it's our pathway to blessing. Sometimes I hear people say, well, I can't believe God let that happen. And I'm like, like say someone who's chasing after the devil gets killed young. And people say, well, I can't believe God let that happen. Well, why wouldn't he? I mean, that person had utter disregard for God. So God owes me. When I am wanting to be my own God, I'm using God's blessings to worship the blessings and not worship God. I use that stuff, and then I think, well, how dare, if God does anything I don't like, I'm just going to curse him. I'm just going to be mad at him. I'm not even going to believe in him. I'm just done with him if he doesn't do what I say. However, I'm doing absolutely nothing that he says. I mean, do we think God is stupid? Do I think God is stupid? I mean, sometimes we treat God like he's stupid. Well, guess what? He ain't stupid. We're the stupid ones for thinking that kind of stuff. So this is what I want us to think about. I want us to think about, is there anything that I grumble and complain about that God has actually blessed me with? Do I have a grateful heart or an ungrateful, arrogant spirit? What does God expect from me, and what do I expect from him? Do I worship the gift, or do I worship the giver? So, I want, and then on my other paper I wrote, listen to God, do what he says, trust in his plan, get the blessings he has waiting for us. That's the plan, and that's this story. So is there anything that anybody can relate to out of this story that you would be willing to share? Yes?
When I first got here, like the first couple of weeks, I was having a hard time, and I would complain about being like, well, I could just go back to jail, I could sleep all day long, wouldn't have to worry about anything, and now I'm like, why would I say that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And now I'm grateful,
Yes.
should have been.
Yes. Yes.
So Egypt, well, we've been kind of going over this with Scott a few times, but before I really even understood what it was meaning, I was reading it, and I could see that Egypt was my life before here. Really, I mean, this is the start.
Slavery.
Yeah.
Living in bondage. Yeah.
This is the start of my wilderness.
Yes.
Getting here and sitting still and trying to figure things out.
Yes.
And instead of drawing farther from God, I'm trying to take every second I can get in the wilderness to draw near to him.
Yes.
But you know, I also got a little bit more out of it when you were saying how they were chasing after them and stuff, and, you know, of course they felt trapped because of the Red Sea, and then behind them they've got the army coming up to him, Pharaoh's army. You know, I feel like that's like all my hang-ups, hurts, and habits is the army coming up behind me, trying to pull me back in, you know, to go back to Egypt because I'm scared, but in reality what I'm facing is, you know, the water's like my face. You know, I gotta, you know, just persevere and get through that and trust that God's gonna get me through that.
Right.
And on the other side, you know, I don't know what's waiting for me, but it's gotta be better than what was behind me.
Yes.
You know, so,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of take-
So that's what I was thinking. So we've all been in bondage. We've been in bondage. Some of us are still in bondage. We're in bondage to our past. We're in bondage to our minds. We're in bondage to situations. I mean, sometimes the bondage is of our own doing, and sometimes we're just born into a bondage situation. But we all have, I feel like we can all relate to having been in bondage. And then we cry out to God, and God delivers us. But God doesn't just take us from bondage to the land of milk and honey. If we're a slave, we don't know how to behave in the land of milk and honey. We don't know how to, all we know how to do is make bricks out of straw. I mean, we don't know how, we're given our food, we're given our clothes, we're given, you know, everything that we need, we're given that, and we have to learn how to live not in bondage. And so it seems like there's an analogy of being in this ministry, and God has raised up leaders, and some of you will come to be, you know, Joshua and Caleb, they were part of the group, you know, and then God raised them up to be leaders. So I'm not saying these leaders are different from you. Some of you will be the leaders. God will raise you up to be the leaders. And then you have to learn. And it's like a back and forth, and you go forward a little bit and back a little bit and forward a little bit and back a little bit, and that's the process. That's the journey of learning how to obey God, learning how to trust God. And you know, I wonder sometimes, even if we had a cloud above us and God said, you know, it says God on the bottom of it, we just look up, okay, He's right there. Would I follow, or would I think, you know, maybe I should go that way, or maybe I should go this way. So anyway, I just thought that there was some relatable things about being in bondage, being delivered, being in the wilderness, and some of us are going to stay in the wilderness. Some of us are not going to surrender to God. We're going to wander aimlessly about until we die, and then that's it. Okay, I mean, that's the honesty of it. But some of us are going to surrender. Some of us are going to surrender, and we're going to have a different life. And it's our choice. And it's a daily choice. It's not a one-time choice. You know, it's not I surrendered to God, I'm good. No, I surrendered to God, and then I'm going to surrender again, and then I'm going to surrender again. You know what they say about the living sacrifice that keeps getting up off the altar? You have to keep sacrificing yourself, keep going back, keep surrendering, keep submitting. Okay, anybody else? Yes?
It makes me think about the generations that we have now, these kids that feel entitled and always complaining about everything, and you give them a right. So, I mean, you know,
Yeah, I feel like I need to bring you the microphone.
we're looking at a lot of entitled kids
Yes,
continue to give and give and give, and they always
Yes.
right and complaining.
yes, yes,
Just as well,
yes,
just as well as us, instead of looking at sometimes of our kids being blessings and things that they do. And, you know, we know that they go through a lot of different things of not doing the right thing, but we complain about it a lot, and they hear us.
yes,
So sometimes people hear things and perceive off of it. Amen.
right.
So it can be vice versa, you know. with
Absolutely.
the grown and the kid, but
Yes.
I see a lot of that in the kids now.
Yes.
They are so entitled.
Yes,
They feel like we have to have internet. No, that's a privilege.
right,
We have to have a phone. No, that's a privilege.
right,
So,
right. You have to have something to eat every day.
Yes.
You have to have water.
So that's what I always see
Yeah.
in teenagers. It's like,
Yeah,
it's a blessing to have those things. And
Yeah.
we have to do it. And then I think, well, he's a blessing too because he does chores and he does, you know.
Yes.
So it's kind of like
Yes.
the reward thing is like,
Yes, it's a constant, it is a tug of war. It's a constant battle in the mind, in the heart, good versus evil, spiritual warfare. I mean, it is. But we adults are modeling behavior for our kids. So it's not just what we tell them, they're watching us. They're watching us, and little kids, little kids know what their parents think, know what their parents say. I've told the story before about some friends of mine that were, the woman was pregnant and her husband was there at the office visit with her, and I was, looking at the baby on the ultrasound. I was like, so, you know what you're going to name the baby? And they're like, oh, well, we're not going to tell anybody. We decided we're not going to tell. I mean, I'm just making small talk. It doesn't, well, probably wouldn't even remember. But anyway, they said, we're not going to tell anybody, till after he's born what his name is. And the 3 or 4 year old kid said, his name is Jack. We're like, oh, we didn't know he knew. We didn't know he knew that. Anyway, I mean, you don't have to tell them. You can just be talking about stuff in private. Your kids watch what you do, listen to what I say to other people, not just to them. Probably more. Listen to what you say when you're not talking to them more than when you're talking to them. But we have to be careful what we model. And kids are born selfish. I was telling, I guess, the staff, I had been on Friday, I went to this store, and it had this little baby onesie. I looked to see what size it was. It was 0 to 3 months. That's relevant. It said grateful on it. Raise your hand if you ever met a grateful baby. No. Baby, what do babies do when they're hungry? Right. What do they do when they need their diaper changed? Cry. What do they do when they got the bellyache? Right. All they do is throw a screaming fit. Now, I love babies, but they have to be trained not to be completely selfish. What if you're in the middle of church and they get hungry? Throw the same fit. What if you're in the middle of a funeral or a wedding or some, dinner with the president and the baby gets hungry? Throw a fit. Why do they throw a fit? They're hungry. They want something to eat. When do they want it? Now. You know that? What do we want? Something to eat. When do we want it? Now. So babies are not grateful. Babies are selfish. And they grow up, they can either get trained by unselfish adults, and we adults either train them that they really are the center of the universe, that what they want is all that actually matters, or we can train them that they're not the center of the universe, that life is not a play about them. Life is a play about Jesus, and it's how you relate to Him and what you can do for other people, and God's going to bless you, but God doesn't owe you, and nobody else owes you anything. I owe it to you as my child to teach you not to be selfish. That's what I owe you, but it doesn't feel so good, but it keeps you out of jail. Makes you where you can earn a living, where you can have something to eat every day. You can buy yourself something to wear. Very good. So and how do you feel about that? How do we feel when someone is ungrateful toward us? Yeah, like.
I want to take everything.
Yeah. Let all that stuff that you're not grateful for, let me just have that, okay? So you have to have a phone and you're mad because you don't have the latest iPhone. So let me just take that bed out of your room. Let me take that air conditioning out of your room. Let me take that, let me not fix any more food for you and not buy the groceries. You just go buy the groceries, and if you gotta walk to the grocery store, unless you bought yourself a car, then I guess you're gonna have to walk, or maybe you can call Walmart and they'll deliver you some if you got any money, and they ain't gonna bring it to you for free. And then do you even know how to fix it? And then who's gonna clean up that mess after you get done? I mean, our kids are in training, okay? And we have to be careful what we teach them, and then do we feel entitled? Are we grateful? What if we had the same old food every single day? Are we grateful to have food? Like, what did we do to get that food? Nothing. Nothing good, okay? I mean, So, I correlate being grateful with humility, and being ungrateful or entitled, another word I think for the same thing, with being arrogant. And so if I'm ungrateful toward God, my opinion is that that's right up there with blasphemy, that that's a form of blasphemy, saying, God, you are not performing to my expectations. We've got a problem here. You've given me some stuff, but it's not what I wanted. And even if it is what I wanted, it's not when I wanted it. You have really disappointed me. Your performance is subpar. So who's God in that situation? I am. Right. So that's why, for me, it seems like blasphemy, because I'm wanting God to be in subjection to me when I'm being ungrateful for all the blessings that He has given me. So, okay, did that spark anything for anybody? Or you want me to read Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers? Okay, Suzanne? Yes.
So what one of the things that I have always been kind of amazed at, I guess, even I'm talking about myself as well as others, but is how quickly we forget. And so anyway, when we're hurting, or when something bad has happened to us, and then we're rescued, or we're in addiction, which was my story, and we're in a really bad place, and our life is pretty much a shambles, and we've done a lot to destroy our lives, and then we get a little bit of something. We're not penniless, we're not homeless anymore, we've got a few friends, and how quickly we forget where we were. And so we're sometimes, like Virginia said a while ago, we're even willing to go back to the dungeon because things aren't going my way right now.
The Israelites said, at least we got to eat fish in Egypt.
Yeah. We were in Egypt,
you did.
It wasn't all that great.
Right.
Make bricks out of nothing, and not having, not being able to sleep very much, and
Getting beaten.
getting beat to death almost. And anyway, I just want us to all remember how far we've been brought. And we've all, whether it was addiction or not, we've all been through some struggles and some hard times. If you're human, you've been through that. And so,
Well, we've all been through addiction. It's just not all chemical addiction.
Well, true. Anyway, we just are so quick to forget, but just because we don't get things exactly the way we want them, when we want them, how we want them, who we want in our life, we're just like babies. We want what we want it right now.
Right. Right.
If you don't give it to me, I'm going to gripe and complain and whine and carry on like I'm in the worst place possible. And I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but we wouldn't be here if everything was going so good.
Right. This is not the first option, right? This is a last resort. Right.
So anyway, it's a really good reminder that we need to be grateful and count it joy in all circumstances, because we've all got it pretty well made right here, right now. No matter what.
We do. Raise your hand if you don't have any shoes to wear today. Okay. Raise your hand if you didn't get anything to eat. Okay, just checking. I got some too. So why is that? Why is that we get a little bit of relief? God, get me out of here. I'll do anything. I will do anything. Just get me out of this situation. Okay, I'm going to get you out of this situation. Okay, you're 2 feet removed from the situation. And then, why do we do that? We are quick to forget. So what can we do? And I don't have the answer. I'm wanting you to give each other and me suggestions. What can we do to not forget? Yes?
Well, I have my inmate ID,
Okay.
and I keep it right beside my bed. So
Did you get that at Walmart, or where'd you get
I
that?
got it in jail.
Oh, okay.
And whenever I'm just like, whatever, I want to go home. And then I look at the picture and I'm like, yeah, you'll go home and you'll be
Yeah.
home and you'll be right back.
Yep.
Back down in
Yeah.
jail.
You can put that thing on, wear it with a smile.
I'm not wearing it.
Yeah. Get your picture made. Get no picture. Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
After my brother passed away, I went and got his hand printed because he
get out of a drinking and driving accident.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
that's,
yeah. Where do you keep it?
it's right here on my leg.
Okay, okay, okay. But now you can't wear shorts that short and you ain't get to see it. So when you go to the bathroom, you can look at it every time you go to the bathroom. Yeah. Yes, but that's good. That's a reminder. Yes, yes.
I think about my children and think about being with them. And,
Yep.
you know, I was to go back to where I was, I would not be able to be with them. I would be back where I was.
Right, right, yes.
My moral compass. and when
Okay.
it's across.
Okay. Does that work? These tattoos and reminders, does it help you?
Yes.
Okay, Ashley?
Journaling.
Yes, journaling is good. Journaling is a good thing to do. To go back and read it helps to do it. The act of journaling is a wholesome, healthy, wholehearted thing to do. And then going back and reading it from time to time is a healthy thing to do. Yes.
I wasn't gonna raise my hand when you asked about the tattoo thing and if it helped. I'll be realistic. I had gotten my he's 12 now, but I had his name tattooed
Okay.
when I got a year clean.
Okay.
And when he was 6.
Okay.
And I relapsed. I
Okay.
thought having his name somewhere, where I relapsed at would be safe for me not to do. Well, it didn't work. But today, he had wrote me a letter on his own, and he had stamped it, and you could tell he wrote the address, and he did it all by himself, because on the fold on the other side of the envelope is where he wrote his address.
Okay.
You know,
Yes.
nobody helped
Yes.
me do
Okay.
that. And, but I got it in a frame on the dresser here in my room.
Yes.
And it says, "Mom, I'm so proud that you quit smoking." Out of all the things, he knows what kind of addiction I was in. He's not stupid. He's been around me for
Right.
years. You know, sorry, but to be so proud of me for quit smoking.
Yeah.
You know, and that's.
I'm proud of you for quitting
You know,
smoking.
just, yeah, and
Yeah.
just to read that and be so just, "Mom, I can't wait to see you. I know I'm not going to see you in a long, for a long time,
Yeah.
but I can't wait to see you." I mean,
Yes.
he doesn't know
Yes.
what fear feels like yet.
Yes.
He's learning.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to have that, this is cool,
Yeah.
but this didn't stop.
But this came from you and that came from his
That
heart.
came from him.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a huge separate, and
Yeah.
I thought this would mean something.
Yeah.
But
And it might mean more now. It might, might be a reminder now.
But that letter is
Yeah.
in a frame.
Yeah,
behind
absolutely.
glass and safe.
Yeah. And it's not the same for everybody. So somebody may, and did y'all see my tattoo?
Yeah.
Do you know what it means? TB skin test. Yeah, okay. All right. Did somebody else have their hand up? Yes.
Gratitude list and keeping, a journal of all
Yes.
answered prayers.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think about when I was wandering the streets in Augusta, Arkansas, wondering where I was going to go, what I was going to do, lost everything. God sent Roger and Suzanne to come rescue me. Not eating canned
Trash.
tomato soup,
Right. Right.
in the car.
Right. Right. Yes.
Be safe at night.
Yes.
It's cold outside.
Yes.
I'm very grateful.
Yes. Yes.
I think staying in the present moment helps me a lot. To not
Absolutely.
push it toward whatever's in front or
Yep.
staying behind me.
Yep.
So being present and grateful.
Yes. Most of what we fret over is not happening right now. It's shame from our past, regret from our past, or fear of the future, or lack of control for the future. Most of what we fear, dread, feel negative about is not right now what's happening. And I say over and over, and I made it up, I don't know that it's true, but I believe it, that we meet God right now. We meet God in the present. God gives us blessings in the present. He can, yeah, anyway, okay, yes.
I guess it's along the same lines as that, but as far as like, how do you change, like how do you do that? Right now mentally, I don't know. I just know that I look in the mirror and I see that I'm still here, I'm still alive, and I have something to look forward to. So over time, changing your patterns and your places and your things, hopefully that will come to my mind.
Yes,
Mentally, I don't really know. I just know I look in the mirror and know I'm still here and I'm still standing.
yes, I'm still in the fight.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 you are. Yes. Whitney.
It's too nervous for it to be-
Okay.
I remember way back when, which was just a few years ago, always being upset like God took my dad or God let me live through all these terrible situations instead of looking at it as God saying like, okay, well, I've removed you from that, and now I've given you a family and people that will redirect you and people that will put you on a straight path, the path that I have made for you. And so now to keep me back in the loop of not feeling sorry for myself for having to go through those things, I see it as I have people that I can call, and I do call those people, which isn't always the case, but now you're in a position where at one time maybe we were only able to call the people that were getting us into trouble, and now we can lean over and talk to or call on the people that are going to help put us back on the path that He has paved for us. So that's a good one.
Yes, it's good. And God, I don't believe that God took your dad so you could have a different mom. I don't believe that. I believe that God works all things together for good. Not all things are good. Some things are bad. I mean, Joseph getting sold, into slavery, his brothers were going to kill him. And then they decided to put him in a pit and leave him for dead, told his dad that he was dead, and then decided to sell him to some people to be their slave. That's how his people got to be in Egypt. That's what started. That's how the Israelites got fed. That's how they got food, is because God sent him ahead. Well, it wasn't good that his brothers hated him and left and decided instead of killing him, they just put him in a deep pit that he couldn't get out of, and then sell him to some people and tell their dad that he died. And their dad grieved forever, for the rest of his life until he found out they were lying. It's not all good things, but God works those things together for good for those who love the Lord. He doesn't work everything together for everybody. People that are working against God, He doesn't owe them. He doesn't owe anybody anything. Yes. Yes.
Jill Ministry is a reality check for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I like to go out there because I stayed there for 3 months before I came here.
Yep.
And just seeing them where I was,
Yeah.
And then also being here with the ladies every day, seeing them come in and watching them change and grow. And just being here when they first get here, it kind of just hits me. It's like, that was me.
Yes. Yes. Excellent.
And then
Yes, Bree.
I just keep thinking by the word of our testimony, and I feel like that keeps our mind on the goodness of God and reminds us of where we came from, where He brought us, and sharing that and not holding it to ourselves. That was something that I did for a long time. I wouldn't talk about this, and I have come to realize that giving God the glory is taking the power away from the enemy.
Yes.
Because I no longer had something keeping all of that in, and so I feel like that sharing your testimony, sharing what all God does in your life, and saying it out loud is a lot like the complaining was causing a bad attitude. Well, how does it not, if you're talking about the goodness of God, give you a grateful attitude?
Yes. 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 And talking about what God has delivered us from. And also God gave them a reminder. I mean, the Passover is one of the feasts, and they kept the Passover while they were in the wilderness. Those 40 years they were in the wilderness, they had the Passover feast. And then now we have communion. I would say the Lord's Supper, but I don't know anybody that's going to get full off of that. The Lord's snack. It ain't even a very big snack. But that, that's our reminder, if we'll let it be. Now, we can get used to that and not think about it. We can, go to somebody's celebration to honor them and not honor them. We can be off in the corner, whatever. But that's what it's for. So He gave us some reminders. I'm going to say He also gave us each other. And so I want to encourage us. See how much time we got left. Not too much. Yes. Where? I can't see. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I can't even see that far. I can, but sorry.
It's fine. The journaling, I was looking at my journal day before yesterday, and I have a bookmark. I make bookmarks
Okay.
And I had referred back to one of the bookmarks, and it said on there, get yourself right so you can go and serve the Lord. And I remember thinking, like, I try to get myself all together to go get saved and stuff, instead of doing that and just going and saying, hey, God, take me like I am.
Right.
And on the bottom it said, I remember praying for the things that I have now. And it's been really hard. So whenever you think about past tense and you look at it now, it's God really came a long way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
journaling, whenever I look back and I was like, you've been doing a lot.
Yes. 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 It's good for us. That's a tangible reminder. That's a physical reminder that we can say, oh yeah, God did that. And we need that. We are forgetful people. We need that. And I just have to say, in case anybody's kind of thinking along that line, one thing she said is that we need to get ourselves right and come to the Lord, but it's actually come to the Lord and He gives us His Holy Spirit to get anything right. The only way we do anything right is through God's power, and so we have to surrender to Him, not after we get it all right. We surrender to Him because we can't get it all right. If you can get it all right, good for you, more power to you, and I bet you're deceiving yourselves. Yeah, good. But those reminders, and maybe He's given us each other. Maybe if we start with negativity, that we can be, you can literally, I'm not listening to that, and you don't have to act better than somebody, because guess what? You're not better than somebody, but you may be acting better than they are today, okay? Or they may be acting better than you are. So we can hold each other accountable. We can have reminders in our room, on our person, whatever it is, because we have to, God gave us each other because we need each other, and we need to live in community. And part of that living in community is holding each other up. And when I'm feeling down, maybe you're not. Maybe you can help lift me up instead of me dragging you down. We can change our focus. It's so much about what we're focusing on. Focusing on what we have makes us grateful. Focusing on what we don't have makes us arrogant.